You're watching Capital City Sunday.
Let's bring in Democratic strategist Joe Zepecki now. Joe, thanks for joining us this morning.
You bet. Happy holidays.
Happy holidays to you too. So when you were here in August, back in the summer, you cautioned people to be skeptical about having new maps by election time. Things have certainly changed on that front. Can you put into perspective for us how big of a win this is for Democrats?
Well, we don't know yet because we don't know what the new map lines are. This ruling from the state Supreme Court means that there will be fairer maps for these elections in 2024, much to my surprise. But until we know how those lines are drawn, I would caution anybody from getting too riled up on my side, because the reality is we're still going to have to go and win a lot of elections, whatever the maps look like, and compete in parts of the state that we haven't always competed at and run our best candidates in. So there are many, many miles to go before the ultimate goal for Democrats is achieved, which is not just a fighting chance in the legislature, but a majority and ability to make progress on policy like healthcare, like cannabis, all of these things that have been left by the wayside by a Republican majority for more than a decade.
So in your view, Joe, Democrats should not be entirely celebrating just yet. There's a long road to go here.
I would not be counting any chickens. We have a long way to go before the number of seats we have in the next legislature hatch, to conclude the metaphor.
Well, let's talk now about some of the places Democrats struggle in the legislative races. If the districts are more competitive, how do Democrats win some of those rural districts in which they've lost ground?
I think you have to meet people where they are and understand that the Wisconsin folks and people across this entire country are really uneasy right now. We are still dealing with the aftershocks and after effects of a global pandemic that I think really messed with people. And part of what I mean there is we have this huge disconnect right now between the realities of the American economy and the Wisconsin economy and what people are saying and how they're feeling about it. When we have inflation cooling, announcements that interest rates will come down next year, GDP going gangbusters, American manufacturing returning, joblessness at an all-time low, those are great stats. And that means the economy is doing really, really well. But people are still very, very uneasy and skeptical about the economy. And so that's the first thing I would say is you got to meet people where they are, understand that even folks whose wages have gone up, that's another great economic indicator, are feeling less certain about the future than they used to be. And once you meet folks where they are, you have to lay out the choice and clarify the choice, because Democrats are the ones, both in Wisconsin and at the federal level, who are fighting to do things like lower healthcare costs, which are a big burden for working families. Republicans want to undo things like Obamacare, which has helped expand access to healthcare and lower costs in the almost 14 years since it went into effect. So once you meet people where they are and you clarify the choice, if we have candidates who are credible and authentic and fit the districts they're running in, we're going to do just fine.
How will Democratic candidates prepare to introduce themselves to voters who may not know who they are? Some, of course, may run for re-election, but there may be some new faces out there. How do Democrats prepare for that?
I'll tell you what, it's going to be really, really hard given the information environment and how much the Trump versus Biden rematch we're heading for is going to block out the sun. The flip side of that is there are more ways to do that than ever, which is through social media, through digital organizing, through relational organizing. So I have no doubt that candidates are going to be able to run effective campaigns, but where it starts and what is happening right now, at least what I'm hearing, is that recruitment is underway. There are going to be new districts where we maybe didn't think we had a shot and we weren't going to run anybody. But right now, people are having conversations and stepping forward and saying things like, I'll take a look at it. I'm willing to consider it if I fall within a district and no other Democrat is going to step up. That recruiting part of this is huge because we don't know exactly when the maps will be finalized, but there's not going to be a ton of time between those lines being drawn and needing to do the things to get on the ballot, like get nomination signatures. So the recruitment process is essential, and it's happening right now.
You have alluded already to how intertwined Wisconsin's state races are with what we'll see on the national level, the presidential race, the Wisconsin's U.S. Senate race. I want to talk a little bit now about President Joe Biden's reelection campaign. Right now, he's struggling in the polls. He's trailing Republican frontrunner Donald Trump in many of those. We've seen a lot of that has to do with his administration's handling of the war between Israel and Hamas, but also, as you said, people are still uneasy about the economy despite a lot of strong signs. So we've seen that term Bidenomics be hit hard by Republicans. There is a question, should Biden ease off the focus on Bidenomics right now?
I don't think so. The reality is that the economy is the number one issue for the majority of voters. And right now, the economy is getting better. The president can't do much at this point to make it get better even faster, but he's done some really, really important things, ranging from the Inflation Reduction Act that is addressing prescription drug costs, for example, expanding investment in the climate sort of overhaul of our energy grid. He's passed the bipartisan infrastructure law where projects across the country, rebuilding roads, runways, and railways is underway. That's putting Americans back to work. Those are the types of jobs that can't be exported. And really, it's Joe Biden demonstrating that there's a value to having a deal maker who has years of experience on both sides of the aisle, because that bipartisan infrastructure law got done with a lot of Republican votes. And so I think Joe Biden's doing just fine. I'm sure it's frustrating to see these polls, but the choice is going to be clarified for the American people in the coming months in ways that will benefit Joe Biden, who always says, don't compare him to the almighty, compare him to the alternative. Well, the alternative is almost certainly going to be Donald Trump, who frankly has not been in the living rooms of the American people for the last 3.5 years. He's been in courtrooms, but he hasn't been in people's living rooms. And once they see how much more chaos than even when he was president is swirling around Donald Trump, I have no doubt that Joe Biden is going to look a lot better by comparison, and people will feel really good about the work he's done for the American people.
Democratic strategist Joe Zepecki, thanks so much for joining the show this morning.
You bet.